Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. I have Peter Behringer and Harley Schlanger coming to the program. I think there's a lot of parallels to the 1930s here. I asked Peter that today. Do you see parallels to the 1930s? He says, it's a different environment, obviously, but history rhymes, and there are parallels going on today. It was refreshing to have Harley here as well because he is living in Germany. He's a spokesman for the Schiller Institute, which is kind of in the middle of all these geopolitical events going on worldwide. They have been moderating and doing conferences to try to share with the world, try to inform the world what's really going on at an international level. So many people here in the United States are so insular. We only look at daily events here, and we don't understand the context in a geopolitical world. Okay, here we go. Hi, Peter and Harley. Welcome to the program. Well,
Thank you,
I'm
Sarah, for
honored.
having me.
Well, Peter, I'm honored, and Harley, I've interviewed you many times, and I'm honored to have you as a friend and your wisdom. But Peter, I'm really honored to have you on the program today. And Harley, thank you for bringing all of us together. 60 Minutes just put out a thing that dropped yesterday. Felt like complete propaganda piece on protecting what's going on in Germany. And we have to talk about this because it feels like we're entering into like a World War, 1930s situation. It's just with common current media. It seems very fascist and incredible. And the journalists aren't even asking the questions to balance this stuff out. Can you, before we dive into this incredible situation, can you share with people what your background is, what you're doing, and we'll start getting into both you and your and Harley's opinion on all this, because both of you live in Germany.
Yeah,
Yes, we now do, and I am German, of course. Well, I started out as an entrepreneur and as a top management consultant in the 1990s. In the technology field, I've seen it all in the venture capital business in those crazy late 1990 years and the crash of 2000 and the next crash of the Eurozone in 2007 and the financial crisis in 2007. I was a publicist at the time, so I covered a lot by writing about it. And it only was in the mid 2010 years that I entered AFD party and became a professional politician at the age of 47 only. So quite late. It was not my life planning to become one, but I see becoming a politician, especially for the Alternative for Deutschland, as a part of a defense mechanism. We have to defend Germany, and well, if you want to see it pathetically, the world against really enormous dangers. Uh, Coming from the financial side, from the monetary side, but also spilling over into society and almost every corner of society. So I think we may want to go into that anyway. And so I entered or was elected into the German parliament, the Bundestag in 2017. I'm the household spokesman of AfD since then. I was the head of the budget committee of the Deutsche Bundestag, even though I'm an opposition politician, obviously. And now I am the vice chairman of AfD Party since 2022.
Now, my understanding is that's one of the things that triggered this response, and I remember Harley telling me about it, is that they have been working in overdrive to block certain parties out of the process. They wouldn't let them into the United States, Biden wouldn't. And then it looks like the conference, the security conference last week, they were members of different parties were banned as well, even if they were popular.
Well, you can make that one party only, which was blocked from that conference. There's another one from the very left, but they're a pacifistic party, so they don't really count here. We have an interest in defense policy. We have very good politicians in our rows, and yeah, but still we are blocked out. I see it as completely undemocratic, and well, many people do so.
Well, so are they concerned because you are the populist party? I mean, people are really supporting your party.
Well, if we were populist, and well, is it a bad thing to to do
No,
what the
no.
people want? No, this is a
Well,
not a question for you, but it's a rhetoric question,
yeah.
and of course it's not. And well, even if we were, it would be undemocratic to block us from the discourse. But
What
we
does
are
it
not.
mean well, what does it mean to be when I said it, it's like you are popular amongst the people. that doesn't necessarily mean you're populist. I don't even know really what all that means, other than you're popular with the people, because they've turned it into a bad word when it just means you're popular. People like you, right? You will gain, and they are scared of that.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't have put it better. That's exactly the way we see it. It is undemocratic. They have no arguments against us, so they do not want to discuss with it. They tried it 8 years ago, and we went through the roof with our polls. So they stopped it, and since then they've been blocking us all the time whenever they can. So let's see how when things end. But yes, we would like to have a clear public discourse and well, be it populistic or not, that is not up to us to decide. It's up to the people to
That's right.
decide whether they want to be represented by a populist party or not.
Well,
And
whatever
Sarah, I
that
can
means.
tell you in terms of the German situation, what they mean when they say populist is against the establishment, against the financial, what we call in the US, the military industrial financial complex. The AfD is anti-war. It's for resuming trade relations with Russia, not being involved in a war. It means anti-green because the green policy is destroying Germany. The economic policies of the Schultz coalition have put Germany into a deindustrialization spiral. And so, what Peter and his party are doing is they're opposing the establishment, and the establishment is collapsing.
But they think they're going to win by shutting you down, keeping you out, suppressing language. But are they, is this hate speech? All these things, are they hiding behind hate? I mean, there is hate. I mean, I get attacked all the time. Fine, there's hate speech. But I'm one of the most pro free speech people on you're going to meet, even though I'm attacked all day long. It's because here they were censoring truthful information and then spinning it as disinformation, and then also characterizing people as hate speech when all they did is not agree with you. Is that happening in Germany even more so than here?
Well, it's the same all over the place. Hate speech is the speech they hate, and that's exactly what they do. It's all Orwellian exchanged and switched. They accuse us of things they do them for themselves all the time. They lie all the time. They are left populist sometimes, but usually Hardy is correct. They are not populist. They adhere to other powers. And yes, they have no arguments, so they have to resort or retort to that kind of techniques against us.
What do people think with the JD Vance speech? I thought that was pretty amazing, and I'm imagining there was a big reaction. What are you seeing in Germany based on that? I'd like both of you guys to comment on this. I think this is important.
Let me try first. Of course, it depends completely whom you ask, but now you're asking me. Um, Even to us, it came a little bit as a surprise, even though Musk and to some extent Trump as well um, gave their support to us for a few weeks now, which they had not done beforehand. And the Biden administration, obviously, not at all. They were completely against us. But still, Trump and Elon Musk did not really support us. Nobody supported us. And then, out of the blue, Elon Musk supported us. And he actually gave a vote. Recommendation for our party, even though he didn't know too much about us. So it really came to a surprise. And even JD Vance in his speech now gave a pretty clear, almost direct vote recommendation for us. It was a little bit indirect, but it was almost direct. Everybody in the room understood it. That's only our level, but obviously he went way beyond that, and it was a complete, well, Philippe Picard against the woke left globalist world and against many lies in the climate discourse. And well, it was very refreshing. Nobody expected that. Of course, he abused his speech slot a little bit because he didn't talk about defense policy at all in that speech, even though it was a security conference. Yes, it was very surprising and I think historic speech. I like the freshness. Obviously, should we gain power at a certain point in time, there will come a bill for that support. I'm not yet sure what that bill will be, but well, we are very happy with that support so far.
Do you feel that Germany is sliding back to a 1930s situation?
Well, history never repeats itself directly.
It rhymes.
There, unfortunately, given the completely wrong economic policy and also the foreign policy, which leads to extremely high energy costs, we're talking 5 times the level in the US now. Um, well, an economic depression is unfortunately pretty likely, and that's how it started at the late 1920s, in the early 1930s. So yes, there we have a few comparisons. The reasons for the depression are, of course, different. It's a lengthy story to discuss the 1930 depression, but here currently in Germany, all governments for at least 20, I would say 30 to 40 years have done almost everything wrong, especially in the energy sector. And it is so interconnected with the foreign sector, as Harley pointed out. We are no longer receiving Russian pipeline gas. And even in the coldest of Cold War times in the 1970s and 1980s, we did trade with the Soviet Union. We did trade gas. Even the left coalitions, left governments did that. But today we are no longer allowed. And to make it completely certain that we don't deal with Russian pipeline gas any longer, they destroyed one very important pipeline through the East Sea, the Ostsee in Europe, the Nord Stream pipeline, which was very bad. And these days we see other pipelines from Russia to Central Europe being destroyed by the Ukrainians. You could say it's a war result, but yes, officially the Ukrainians are our allies, and they destroy our vital infrastructure. And so this is really bad.
Well,
Through the back door, if I may say that, we do receive Russian gas, but it's all LNG gas, as we are receiving from the US. We also receive a lot of US liquid natural gas, and but it's a lot more expensive than the pipeline gas. So this really is a bad
when you
situation.
said the Ukrainians are destroying the pipelines and they're your allies, well, the United States is supposedly a German ally. And if Seymour Hersh is right, it was the US that blew up the Nord Stream pipelines. So, and
And blamed it
Schultz,
on the Russians.
yeah,
I was not talking about the land pipeline
yeah.
in Ukraine itself, not about the Nord Stream thing, but yes, I have to agree, Hardy. What happened 2 years ago with the Nord Stream pipeline, well, was not brought about by the Ukrainians alone, nor by the Polish alone. There have been other secret services behind it. That's correct.
We're living in incredible times where it feels that fascism is taking over or dictatorship. I don't even know what you call this. It's incredible. And there's a breath of fresh air starting to come in of pushing back against this incredible agenda. Now, what are the people there in Germany thinking?
I'm not
Anybody?
sure if I'm not sure if many people really understand the big game behind it. Not many people are interested or educated in the geopolitical thinking. We are kept from too much knowledge here, but there are, of course, more intelligent people and more informed people. And if I may, I would like to point us to the precious metal sector, which smells a rat. It actually smells the distrust and the power play of the big powers currently, and has been for a while, but especially these days, the precious metal markets are seeing very interesting developments. It's not just the gold price going up, but it's physical gold leaving London to the US, which shows there's a distrust both against the British not giving out the physical gold bars if they are there at all, and the COMEX. I'm sure your listeners know what I'm talking about,
Yep.
which is officially a paper future market. They have to bring in a lot of physical metal just to make sure that the metal is there, because nowadays the COMEX customers demand delivery, which they had not done or had hardly ever done in the past. Officially, the reason is the Trump threatening tariffs on commodities, on goods imported, and potentially even gold, which personally I do not believe. It's hardly impossible to put tariffs on gold. It has never
Yeah.
happened, and I don't believe he will do that. But maybe it's just a deception, a great deception. But he wants the gold to come to the US because gold, to some extent, is financial power. It is not the only power of a sovereign nation. Currencies are nowadays not backed by gold, but they are backed by economic power. They are backed by trade surpluses, and they are backed by the military. So the US has quite something to back the world currency reserve status of the dollar. But the symbolic value of gold must not be underestimated. So I think it is very interesting what we're seeing these days in the gold market.
Well,
Maybe you
yes,
want to discuss it.
well, yeah, we can
Let,
dive into it. Go ahead, Harley.
let me relate that to your question because we're talking about extraordinary times. My view is that we're coming to the end of a 500-year period of European colonialism. And there's a shakeup as a result of that, especially since 1971, when the relationship of the dollar to gold was ended by Richard Nixon. That opened the door for speculation. It opened the door for the central banks to take over economies. And increasingly, every decade, new developments occurred which gave more power to central bankers, like the Federal Reserve, the Bundesbank in Germany, the Bank of England. What we've seen in the last 30 years is a move away from that increasingly. So we have these trillions of dollars of debt, which can never be covered. And the so-called military industrial complex wants to continue a looting process, not just against the global South, but now increasingly against the populations of Europe and the United States. And that's why Biden lost. And that's why we have Trump trying to figure out how to get a manufacturing revival. And the same thing is what Peter and his group are doing in Germany.
I heard the term debt, and that's a very important point here. The US, all the world is drowning in debt, but the US
Yep.
has a lot of debt. You have some $36.5 trillion of debt these days. I think growing by 2 trillion. That's 1,000 billion. So we're talking about 36 trillion US dollars, growing by 2,000 billion per year. And there is a rumor in the market that potentially Trump plans an official upgrading and revaluation to upwards of the gold price
Yep.
in order to, well, somehow manage the US national debt. But I did a few calculations, and I think that is just not possible. It takes a $4,000 increase per ounce of gold, per ounce, that's 31 gram, then you only gain 1 trillion additional liquidity into the Fed system. And we're talking about 36 trillion of US gold. So I think the revaluation point of gold will not work out, even though the financial industry is seriously talking about that.
Well, what could they
And
raise it to? Because even let's say that they did it to 100,000. Would
they,
that
they could, but that would be a shock to the world. And I think
but it would
all
it
the
would
banks would go bankrupt.
hyperinflate. It would hyperinflate the dollar, right? And it wouldn't work.
That would be really a complete shock. They can't do it. What they might be able to do, just to change the book entry from 42, which where it stood since 1971,
They should do
to the
that.
current market price today of close to $3,000. So they could do that, and it would free up close to 1 trillion, which is fine, but it's not enough to actually rid
Yeah.
the US from debt. And the
Well,
same,
and
same, by the way, is true because there's another speculation regarding the Bitcoin. It doesn't work, even if the Trump administration, which they have announced, should buy 1 million pieces of Bitcoin. That would be 100 billion of value. And even if that developed tenfold, it would still not, that would then make a price of 1 million per Bitcoin. Then the US would have a little more liquidity of 1 trillion, which is again not enough to rid the US of debt. But both stories are being rumored and discussed in the financial markets, revaluation of the Bitcoin and of gold, but it will not be enough. So the US will have to find another solution from the real economy. By the way, the same. All other countries in the world will have to do the same. We have to become stable again. We have to develop real economies, not based on additional debt all the time, as Harley has said.
There are groups, or one group that I know of, the Global Gold Monetary Fund, who is claiming to have access to a century and thousands of year old gold. And they are claiming that they can write the debt off of every country in the world if they join this. And they claim they have all this gold, and all these people are saying, have you looked into that group at all, either of you?
Well, I'm a gold expert, and I think I stumbled across that rumor some 20 years ago. Yes, I know what you're talking about. But, well, the story is pretty consistent. We know how much gold has been mined throughout history. It's a 3,000-year-old history, but most of the gold has actually been mined in the 20th century, 21st century. We're adding some 3,000 tons per year annually, and we have some 220 to 230,000 tons above ground, and that's it. We are not talking about millions of tons. I can't confirm those rumors, and they have never been confirmed. So unfortunately, that'll not work out. But obviously, you can put any number to the ounce. So ultimately, mathematically, it's possible to back any kind of debt and indebted dollar. You could do that, but it has repercussions on so many fronts. You can't just put $100,000 mark per ounce, even though some gold bugs would like to see that.
What do you think about the COMEX, uh, this rumors that the COMEX is being going to collapse because people are taking, because the ETFs are what, like a 10 times, kind of like what banks are, like a bank, it's a bank run essentially, but on the COMEX with gold.
That's a
What do
different story. That's a very
yeah.
different story, of course. There is some truth to that. The COMEX is backed, if you want, by a maximum of 1 or 2% physically. On the other hand, and the professionals there would say that it was never meant to be a physical exchange. It was always meant to be a future contract. Everybody knew it is not backed, but now people demand delivery. And if you only have a 1 or 2% backing, then you have to ship in fresh bars pretty quickly. The London markets are different. Here, physical metal is traded. But now that the COMEX wants it, because the Americans, for some reason, either because they fear tariffs of Trump, or they have just a general distrust in the American system and want their physical gold, they now want it. They now want it in large quantities. And yes, there is a run on the COMEX. It's not the first time I've been following and seeing that in the last 25 years. We have had those situations in the past for various reasons. Usually, it was manageable because you can lease gold to whoever wants. You can currently the lease rates of gold are 12% overnight leasing. Just imagine that. Usually it's 2%. So the COMEX and American marketplaces also unbacked or semi-backed ETF hoards are struggling to get physical metal because too many of their customers demand delivery. So it is an interesting situation. Well, but it's not the first time in history that this is happening, but it's serious, and that's one of the reasons why the price is exploding currently.
Is there a way to be able to do a bankruptcy reset where the debt for the world debt is erased without fundamentally hurting everybody? I mean, could that happen? Can you see a scenario? Because it used to be back in the day, back in ancient times, they used to do jubilees, right? They knew they every so often they do jubilees to refresh, and because this happened, the debt was too
Yeah.
large. It would grind society to a halt,
Yes, yes,
and
of
so
course.
they would do it was planned jubilees. Do you think they could do something like that?
The answer is yes. Every debt can be written off or get out of existence, be it the debt of an individual, of a nation, or currently for the whole world. Yes, you can get rid. There are two methods. One is the deflationary method. You just declare bankruptcy. You're not paying back your debt, and it's gone. It's out of existence, and the people who gave you the money don't get it back. You can do it on a national level. It happened many times in history. Argentina has been experiencing that 2 times in the last 25 years before Milei took over. And yes, it can happen all the time. Germany has had the situation in 1948 after the last Second World War. And the other method is the inflationary method. You can always grow yourself out by printing so much money that the existing stockpile, however large it is, will become irrelevant and neglectable. You can do that. Germany did that in 1923. The hyperinflationary scenario. It took 2 or 3 years. At the end, it took only 2 or 3 months, and everything was over. Germany had no debt after that, but the situation was horrible because everybody has lost their. So, well, you can do it, and at a certain point in time, even the whole world will have to do it. But it is not a nice situation. The transition to the restart without debt is not a nice period, usually.
Well,
Yeah.
and also, Sarah, it's worth noting that it's in periods like this that you have wars
Yep.
Yes.
because they call them bankers' wars or war is a racket, according to General Smedley Butler. The idea that one country will decide to take it upon itself to grab something from another country to and then create liquid assets against the loot. But the problem is that the global debt is so large right now, led by the United States. And secondly, the physical production has been contracting in much of the world, not China, not Russia, but in much of the world, including the United States, we've had a contraction of physical production. And so the first question is, how do you, if you are going to do something to deal with the debt, you have to at the same time have a strategy for manufacturing, for making sure there's enough food produced and enough for trade. And this is why you have governments that have conferences. I think that what we're looking at now, what Trump is looking at, and what Putin is looking at, and maybe Xi Jinping also, is trying to figure out a way to get a jump start toward a new series of international relations for trade and physical goods production. That's the positive side. What Peter's talking about is that if you try to protect the the holdings of the wealthiest, then you're going to end up with mass starvation, civil unrest, and chaos. Can the European Union hold together, Peter?
Well, really, the European Union as it is today was thought out in the 1980s by French elites. They wanted the German money. They wanted the Bundesbank to lose its power, which was very powerful at the time. They wanted the Deutsche Mark at the time, the Force de frappe de l'Allemagne, as they said, the atomic weaponry of Germany, which we didn't have. But our D-Mark in German mark was as hard, and the French feared it. And so the European Union, and that's the truth, the historic truth behind the foundation of the European Union in 1992 is, it only worked because everybody wanted Germany's money. Well, they have received that all of that today. There is no national power left, hardly any national power left with the nation states, including ours. And at a certain point in time, even Germany will run out of money. We have already lost 100% of our trade surpluses, which we have had for 60 years. We were export world champion in between 1960 and 2000. Then the euro was introduced. We were still vice champion, and today we have no trade surplus whatsoever. So there is not too much to be gained from a union with Germany. It'll continue for a few more years, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter even what my party says. We are very critical with the European Union, but it doesn't really matter because the main purpose of the foundation is no longer there, and then the French will abandon it themselves. That's my prognosis, but it'll take a few more years because, institutions take a long time to unravel.
Let me inject something here that I think is important. I think the reason Peter's in politics is that he has a view of these dangers and is trying to do something about it. And using a campaign and a political party that was created from almost scratch to build an awareness in the population in Germany that Germany has no sovereignty, that the idea of being a patriot in Germany is, according to the Bundesverfassungsschutz, the Interior Ministry, that's a Nazi idea. So the idea of being proud of your country is somewhat eliminated. But what's happening in terms of national sovereignty and movements around the world is that people are beginning to realize that the nation state, if it's run properly, so that people have institutions of self-representation, they can change things. And that's what the EU and that's what the NATO is trying to stop. That's why they're attacking Orban in Hungary. That's why they overturned the Romanian election. They don't want people to think you can change things by voting. And the problem is voting itself is not enough. You actually need to recruit people who can think like statesmen and figure
I
out
agree.
how to take up these complex processes, which Peter's been discussing in terms of how you get out of this crisis.
Just two sentences, because I'm glad you said that, Harley. I am a freedom fighter and have been for 25 years now. In all respects, my party is fighting for the free use of cash as opposed to book entries in banks only. We are fighting for the nation state, which I think is the freest form of organization
Yeah.
possible. We are fighting for gold personally. I personally wrote a book and bring back our gold, repatriate our gold, which actually led to quite a few hundred tons to be repatriated from the US to
Wow.
Germany
So you were the catalyst
some
for
10 years
getting.
ago. So I'm a freedom fighter on all fronts almost. But to some extent, you have to face reality, and only if you know your dangers, you can fight them, as Harley put it. Thank you for that. The problem, the root cause of all evil really is the unbacked monetary system since 1971, no backing there. And since then, those banks, those with the printing presses, the central banks, but also the big investment banks, were able to print money out of thin air for well, incredible amounts.
Too big to fail.
As
Yeah.
long and they are too big to fail too. And as long as they can do that, and as long as they have that status, they will dwarf every crowdfunding, every private capitalization of interesting projects, and that hasn't been so before 1971. So there
They have
was a
too
world
much
for now.
power,
There
essentially.
was. It's not only you in the US. This is a worldwide phenomenon, and
Yep.
all the central banks have it in conjunction with the governments, which guarantee the central banks their existence. So it's a sort of symbiosis. The governments guarantee the central banks their existence, and the central banks fund the governments and their debt. So that is the
Yep.
symbiosis going on here. And well, ultimately, but this is not possible to change it from Berlin, of course. It is not even possible to change that from Washington. Well, the world will have to rethink that model. It only came into existence August 15th, 1971, internationally, when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard at that day. Almost all currencies were taken off the gold standard in that instant because they were all indirectly fixed to gold via the fixed line link to the dollar. And we have to find a solution to just redo that at a certain point in time. I don't know when that will come.
It's pretty much our number one priority. It's what's causing all this stuff to happen because they can print money as much as they want, and we can't. You can't, I can't. This the innovation, they can't. And then the countries are all in debt, and they can print as much as they want. They can do what they want, and the countries are in debt. And their power is so enormous that nobody can overcome that. But isn't that ending now? I mean, isn't that they're at the end of this rope because it's their house of cards is collapsing?
Well, I've heard that too often in 25 years only, so I don't believe it yet. They are
That's
changing the
fair.
rules. They have been changing the rules all the time, especially in the last 20 to 30 years, especially in the financial crisis when things were over, both for the euro and for the dollar. But they changed all the rules, especially in Europe. We threw overboard the Maastricht Treaty, which was the cornerstone of the euro. And well, if you don't follow any rules, you can kick the can down quite a little longer.